is Halloween, this is Halloween. Pumpkin screaming.
Hey guys, so happy Halloween. Mealy is back. We're both in costume. She is a cat. I am a mermaid. So I wanted to make this in part, I wanted to just, make a video on Halloween so I could say happy Halloween, show off our costumes. But also, I wanted to talk about how blind people are portrayed in the media, and I feel like this is a good day to do that. A day where, people might dress up as, I don't know, Daredevil, or dress up as, whatever blind person, and then just continue to project, like, whatever misconceptions they might have. So, yeah, I guess we can just get into that now. I'll also insert a clip later on of a very awkward moment at my dorm's Halloween party last week. Decorating a pumpkin.
Now what are you doing
with letters?
What'd you say? You're digging for letters.
Yes, I am. At the Halloween party.
Because that's what college students do, right?
What'd you say?
That's what college students do.
Exactly. How we spend our night. Oh, I also forgot to add that the reason I'm being a mermaid is because my hair is dyed blue, which is my crowning achievement. I did that this summer, and yeah, I don't regret it in the slightest. Okay, so Mealy, actually, I've kind of thought about this, but I never put it into the form of a video. And so Mealy had been watching It's
a J-drama.
Okay, she'd been watching a J-drama that featured a disabled character, and she was really happy about how they were portrayed, or like how, if not how they were portrayed, then just it felt more real than I guess a lot of shows. So talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so I could go on and on, so you need to stop me.
Okay.
So this is a 11 episode, each episode being on 15 minutes, J-drama and Japanese drama, where it's talking about this girl who has a disease, the spinocerebral degeneration. I am so proud that I can say that right. I don't even know if it's right, but I'll also put it on the screen. And she gets diagnosed when she's already like in high school and 15 and like already like a regular teenager. So we get to see how she gets treated first as like a normal teenager with like friends and like school, and school is supposed to prepare for her for college, like it's like pretty good at school, it's a big deal, to like, all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, it comes gradually, like she starts falling or not being able to use chopsticks, so she switches to like fork and stuff, and the worse it gets, the more you see people kind of either, there's this one scene where, because her family owns a store, she's watching the store and somebody's like, oh, where's your sister? Why isn't your sister helping you? She's like, it's fine, I can watch. No, where's your sister? And then her poor little sister gets in the house like, hey, I'm back from school. And she's like, why aren't you helping your sister? How dare you? And she's like, okay, I'll help. And then the main character's like, oh no, it's fine, you can like go, put your stuff down, it's fine. She's like, no, you gotta go help your sister. How dare you leave a disabled person to run the store? And it's just like, this is totally something that would happen. And there's just other instances of like how the mom reacts, how the school reacts, how friends react, how like all these people react to this thing, and how big of a commitment it actually is to, like, well, not big commitment, but like this is also
The change.
And also the show is set in like 2005 Japan, so I think their definition of accommodations is slightly different, but it's also based on a diary that was written in like the 60s to 80s, I think. So like there's also that cultural aspect and time.
Historical.
Well, also cultural, because they're more like, well, obviously not everyone, you can't stereotype, but it tends to be, as far as I understand, a little more like, let's all kind of conform, and maybe not conform, but let's not make a fuss, let's not be different.
Try to be as normal as possible, as quote unquote normal, or as like the norm as possible, do you mean?
Yeah. With the school uniforms and like everybody wearing similar like hair and stuff, I think there's definitely more prominence in like let's not rock the boat. And so I just thought that it wasn't it wasn't overdone. B, there was no cure, so it's not like, yay, she can just, be
Walk
cured at the
again
end.
or- yeah.
And C, it was not romanticized. Like, I feel like there's a lot of, I'm sure some of you guys have seen, like, The Fault in Our Stars, which I love that movie. But, like, 10 movies later, we have so
It's
many.
overdone.
It's overdone. And this show absolutely was not, nobody was happy with, this happening to her. And it was absolutely not romanticized. And it wasn't the point to be like, oh yeah, look, like this person, there is a romantic interest who I found it was actually requested by the mom. Like she didn't have like romantic interest in the real life, but the mom was like, I kind of wanted my daughter to have like a romantic experience during high school.
Which is awesome.
Which is really cute. And it wasn't even like, it wasn't even like in your face. I don't think they even kissed. I don't remember.
And it wasn't I love you in spite of this.
Yeah. I mean, he was like always there, but it wasn't. It wasn't like that. It was like
as
we're
explicit,
friends.
or it wasn't.
Yeah. And there's this one scene where somebody was like, "Oh, hi, I'm so and so. Are you okay?" And
Which is something that we can definitely relate to.
And they're like, because she was in a hospital, and he's like, "Oh, I'm a medical student, and I'm gonna like take care of you soon. So please be patient while I learn," or whatever Japanese polite niceties. And then the guy, he's like, "Hey, she has trouble moving, but she can hear you and understand you just fine. So you need to learn a little bit more before you can call yourselves doctors." And I'm like,
and so, part of the reason I really wanted to talk about that is because one, so many blind people and just other disabled people in general can relate to that or relate to that attitude. Like, people talking to you like a child, and it's like, yes, I'm blind, but there's nothing wrong with my hearing. And then for someone who's hearing impaired, then they can probably read your lips, or they can, if they have a hearing aid, they'll still understand you perfectly fine,
and
perfectly
I feel like they can let you know
what they need. Or if they don't understand you, or if, just like anybody for any situation. Like, why is your automatic default to act differently before we tell you that we need that? Because, that's one, alienating. Two, it seems silly. And so I wanted to, bring that back to a broader conversation of disabled people in general in the media, but more specifically blind people in the media. I was talking to Amelia about the fact that for a lot of disabilities, so that one was incurable, and I feel like since they were also holding true to a story, she wasn't able to walk or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I noticed that a lot of times, for a blind person, their goal is to get their sight back, but a lot of times like a deaf or just any other type of disability, they work more on like working with the disability.
And I've noticed with autism, I don't know how many things related to autism you've seen, but a lot of times I feel like they try to make it like, oh, this person's super great at math, or this super great.
They try to find like that one thing, like, see, look, they're not that strange. Is that what you mean? Or like
a bit, or like also you're kind of giving the idea that then again, it's fine because he can do math. Because, like, what if there's an autistic person who's not
good at math, or who's not, who's just a normal kid and also happens to be autistic?
Yeah, and so also I forgot to say that the name of the drama is 1 Liter of Tears, and it's actually on YouTube. I think, it's been out for like over 10 years, so I don't know. I can
like put a link to it too.
Yeah, so go check it out.
She messaged me nightly to tell me like, oh my god, this happened, and it's so amazing. And no, but I do think that that's awesome though.
Visually impaired folks watching, it is not translated in English, so I just use the Seeing AI app, which I don't know if you also want to link, or if everyone just knows what the Seeing AI app is.
I can link that too.
That's what I use to just fiddle. Well, it takes a little bit fiddling around to figure out where to put the phone in front of your computer or iPad or whatever you're watching on. But then it was reading subtitles to me at like
as
real
it went
time.
Along.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And I feel like, so going off of that, this is something that a lot of people don't always acknowledge or realize. Like, yes, we might be blind, but we have so many different like technologies and different ways of going about and quote unquote seeing the world.
The other day, sorry to interrupt again, but the other day I went to breakfast with a friend and I got tea, and I was like, okay, where's the sugar? And I got the sugar and I started pouring it into my cup with, I put my finger in the cup because it's my drink, so it's fine. Or like I put it above the cup to kind of gauge how much sugar I was putting in. I guess I could have used a spoon, but no, it was one of those things that had like a little hole, you know what I mean? I don't know, but I had one of those, so I just put my hand there, and he's like, whoa, that's so cool, I never would have thought that. I'm like, but it's just normal for me.
And there's so many things, like, there's so many things that I feel like we do. Like I remember I was washing dishes one day and my sister, I had like felt around to double check that I had gotten everything off, and she's like, oh, I usually visually scan it, and and I feel like for the most part that works, but I feel like that's where some people also come into trouble. Like it's like, oh well, I don't see anything stuck to it, so therefore it's clean. But then you feel it later and you're just like, oh no. And it's like it's some things that seem so obvious, but the world is so visually based that you don't think about what to do not with your vision. And I feel like that's why in media again, like why there's so many things that are like you have to get your sight back, or you can't, or like a show like Daredevil, who he might as well not be blind. Like that's just like a cool addition to his character. But honestly, beyond that, like what, I feel like someone has told me that he has got like X-ray or some sort of whatever vision is in the name of his power. And it's like, but why can't he be blind and navigate the world necessarily in other ways? Like it sounds like he can see without seeing, if that makes sense, rather than like using his hearing or whatever. And someone can correct me if I'm wrong, because I've not actually watched Daredevil, but whereas I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with the author N.K. Jemisin. She's a pretty well-known sci-fi writer, and she has the I think it's the 100,000 Kingdoms trilogy, and in the second book she has a character, Ori, who is blind, and her power is also related to her vision, or like she can see magic but she can't see anything else. And she's gotten a lot of flack for that, like having her disability related to her having her power, her ability being related to her disability. But I think what I liked about the book, and again, someone can tell me if I, have misinterpreted Daredevil, since I haven't actually watched it, just from what I've read. But what I liked is that, she went about life and it wasn't like, oh, I can see magic, I wish I could see everything else. It was just like, okay, this is something that I can do. And, she didn't automatically know the color words for magic all of a sudden. Like it wasn't like this magical, like, I feel like people mysticize blind people and put them on this weird magical pedestal. And it's just, she was just like, okay, like the person who had a lot of magic, it was like shiny and bright to her, so she called him shiny. Like it wasn't like, oh, his power was yellow, and like somehow she knew that without actually knowing it. But beyond that, she went about her life, and she was capable, and I feel like there were disadvantages for her being blind, and that was something that the author dealt with, rather than just like, she could get around all things because of her power.
And also, I want to kind of add that there are visually impaired people who I feel like we both would agree maybe didn't gain some independent skills and maybe give off the impression that they need the help. However, a lot of times I feel like that's not due to actual vision. It's the amount of training that person has had.
Yeah, I completely agree. Or how training, and also how the people around you.
Training and how pampered you were, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of other people's perceptions of what you can do.
Like you might be fully capable of doing everything, but if your mom never lets you do anything, then you're probably just going to continue to adhere to that. Like, oh, well, if I just tell someone to, my mom did it, so you're going to do it, and therefore, like it's not necessarily a lack of ability. Now, don't get me wrong, some visually impaired blind people do have underlying disabilities, but I think that can be said with any able-bodied or like someone else with a different disability. But you don't see a sighted person, like let's say this girl walks into a wall, you're not going to be like, oh, all of sighteds are like this or whatever, because as a sighted person, but you somehow manage to make the blind person, like one blind person, like be ambassador for the whole community. And I guess that goes into like a deeper thing with people's perceptions, just like with this isn't necessarily race-based, but just thinking about like people who, they're like, I feel like I'm the ambassador for the entire like Black community, Native, Chinese, whatever, just because no one has ever interacted with you before, and what you do therefore stands for everybody. And it's like, but that's not the case. And if most people can see how that's crazy, obviously not everybody, but if a lot of people can see why that's crazy in terms of race, like why is that any different when it comes to like vision? And again, so just like back to, like, I feel like someone's going to be like, oh, I'm Daredevil for Halloween, but it's going to be like, they won't actually think about what it's like to be blind. I feel like they'll think of it as being sighted with all of these extra capabilities. Like, oh, I can see you, plus I can see all of these extra things. Like, I feel like, him being a blind, superhero. Like, it's just like, oh, now I can get all of these cool things, like the cane, which people have walked up to me and called a ninja stick or magic wand. Like, they can get, like, oh, I can get this cool magic wand, plus all of these extra abilities and powers. Like, it doesn't, no one's gonna end up in these deep, contemplative moods about what it means to be a blind person or things like that. Just gonna be like, oh, nifty costume.
Thank you.
Your life, you are a nifty costume, you blind person. There was an article that I'm also gonna link that was published in BBC like 2 weeks ago, that was talking about a woman in a wheelchair who put spikes on her chair because people like to stop this unwanted grabbing. And it's like, so this woman in a wheelchair and other people presumably in wheelchairs have been like, people have come up to them and just started like rolling them down the sidewalk, not knowing where they're going. And this is like me when people just grab my arm and they're like, oh, here, go this way. And it's like, but you don't know which way I'm going. You don't know. Someone has been like, oh, like you can cross the street. And I'm like, but I'm turning. And so I won't say anything like, oh, you're not going this way. Or like, or just because they don't see what's in front of me, they'll assume, or, like,
go. So to add to that, I think we've also complained to each other about how when like you ask like, excuse me, I don't know, what street is this, or is this north or something, they're like, where are you going?
And it's like, what does that have to do with, if it were a sighted person, you would just, if you're not giving them a bad attitude, because we're blind, therefore we deserve your pity.
I feel like someone still might say.
Someone still might, but I feel like it might be less likely, or they're less likely to assume that you don't know where you're going. Like, you're just checking or whatever until you ask, or depending on how confused you look.
Yeah.
But with a blind person, it's just automatically like, you don't know where you're going because you're asking this question. It's not because you can't see the sign or you want to double check. It's because you don't know where you're going, therefore I must help you.
Yeah, and the one time I was walking, this is kind of deviating from the media, but rambles. I was going into the train and somebody's like, where are you going? I'm like, the downtown 6 train that is right here. And they're like, okay, good, you're going the right way. I'm like, did I need your affirmation?
Exactly. And there have been other people who are like, oh, you're keep going straight, you're doing great. And it's like, what if I'm not doing great? What if I actually was lost and you're just, but you don't know. But because for you, like, you have to assure yourself about my ability. And again, going through media too, like, you're assuring, so many people have asked me, like strangers, oh, I hear there are surgeries with you getting your sight back. You'd love to do that, right? And it's like, actually, no, I wouldn't, because it'd be really disconcerting, honestly. I've only ever been able to see out of one eye, and like getting that visual feedback from the other side, like, how weird that might be, and like the adjustment that would need to take, and then like potentially like relearning or reworking on my print. I pride myself on my fairly fast like Braille reading speed, and that's gonna be like a weird like hassle, or like to then be tossed into a print world. And like, this is something also I've thought about. There's so many shows that like show like the blind person getting their sight back, and it's amazing, they can see their family for the first time. But like, what's the adjustment period like? What do they do after that? Like, what do they continue reading Braille in a sighted world? Do they start learning print? How does that work? Do they have any struggles? Like, let's say it's someone in high school who's now is fully sighted and they're now working on print. Like, how does that set them back in any way? I feel like there's always just this like beautified or like halcyon version of blindness. And also going off of back to the one thing that I will critique N.K. Jemisin for is that the fact that she could see people's magic, or you could see people's magic in 100,000 Kingdoms, then it's like, this is going back to the people who are like, oh, blind people can see what's on the inside. Like in those, romantic movies, it's like they fell in love in spite of what he or she looked like, because, they were just, like they saw the beauty of their personality.
And even with that, when it's like more illness, less disability, which I feel like it kind of spectrum from when it comes one to the other. But like in a lot of those movies where there's like a person passes away, it's always like either there's like a letter, or like the person looks back on memories, the person who's left behind, and they're all like, oh, I miss you stuff. But is there ever like depression following? Is there ever like this person is not able to move on, or just it's always this, oh, I've learned such a valuable lesson from your death, and now I get to just keep on living my life.
From you, just being blind and living your life. And it's like, all right, but what about the person themselves? Like, weren't they funny? Like, were they anything else but being blind? And why are blind people always the inspiration? Like, I want a blind anti-hero,
Oh, that'd be cool. You should write one. Or is that what people just tell English majors? You should write one.
I mean, honestly, that's what most people tell me. But I mean, I'm sure you're like, wow, this is an amazing drawing, and someone's like, all right, go draw it. Like, but yeah, no, every I'm like, oh, this is a great idea, and they're like, yeah, go write it, and I'm like, you write it, all right? I'm working on like 2 other things, but I think that would be cool. Like, blind people are always. It's like blind people, I guess, fall into the other category. I was gonna like go back to like, so there's the magical Negro or the noble savage for like Native American people, and like also just like the magical the magical non-white person, like the Chinese or Japanese like instructor of karate, like they only appear to teach you that, or like the Native American or black person who offers like this spiritual wisdom and then they're never seen again in the thing. And it's like the same with the blind person, like they're the prophet who's just like points you on your journey, or like they see what's on the inside and they tell you how to access it, and that's it. And so I was just realizing that we all just fall into that category of the other category.
But now you got me started thinking on the villain. Like, imagine how cool that would. I don't know. That just seems really cool to me.
And you never know how they're always just appearing everywhere, but they like follow your footsteps. Like you think you're so slick, but they follow your footsteps.
They don't have to imitate other people's. Well, there's like studies on whether emotions are learned or. What's the other born with?
Like nature versus nurture.
There you go. But I think there's definitely a little bit. Did I say what? Language?
You said language.
Yeah, I did. Okay, great. But I think there's definitely something cool about like this person who doesn't do, and if it's creative license, you could probably do like a little bit of like, well, he doesn't know how other people do this, so maybe he can just be this. Because I think emotionlessness is also kind of scary.
It is, and I feel like depending on how But with that said, I feel like emotionlessness still stems from something, because you didn't grow up with other people, and so I feel like let's say that was the case, or let's say he was like neglected, then I feel like that still stems, like that's still to some extent that might be an emotion.
I think we've just written a really great character, guys.
Let
us know if we should write an actual story. I'll illustrate
Give us
it.
the plot line. She'll illustrate. It'll be great. But yeah, so just like in general, like oh my gosh, with my costume, I yesterday I was going to work.
You're gonna be late to class, ma'am.
What time? Let me see what time it is. Okay, we'll get back to that in a second while I check. But so I was on my way to work, and I was on the train, and I had my headphones in. I have 22 minutes.
Okay.
32 minutes actually. But what was I doing? Oh, I was on the train, and this person, she had said something about my costume, and I like took an earpiece out because I didn't realize she was talking to me initially, because that's also the other thing, like I'm blind, and if you're not yelling at me, you're just talking to me and assuming that I know that you're talking to me. And she said something, and then she's like, oh, I don't know how she knows the colors. And it's like, well, one, I'm not fully blind, but even if I was, like, there are so many apps out there that tell me the colors. But people just assume, like,
I could just ask a human.
I could, yeah, just ask my mom, sister, ask you, random stranger, what color this is. And she's like, like, it's all blue. Like, I think she's a mermaid. I think she was talking to a kid. But people also talk to me in that tone, so sometimes it's hard to tell. But it's just like, why is it such this amazing feat? Or like the fact that my hair is blue. I don't think I actually described it. So for my visually impaired friends, it's like it's different shades of blue, but like it's different shades of a dark blue, and it gets into like a seafoamy green along the roots. Which is why a lot of people are like, oh, this is giving me like a mermaid vibe, like the various shades of blue and then the green.
And also just has a mermaid shape right now. I just feel like you should be floating around in some coral reef somewhere.
Oh, thank you, darling. And when I went to CVS a few days ago, my hair was out, and the lady's like, to one of the workers said to the woman I was with, she's like, I wonder if she knows how pretty her hair is. And it's like, I mean, I think it's pretty. I guess you think it's pretty as well. And also, why are you speaking to her? Like, what? And I was like, thanks. And it's like, so I can hear you. She and I were engaged in conversation, so you know that I can speak. So why are you speaking around and about me? And I feel like that's something that's also not portrayed in media, because again, it's you want to like prettify it.
Except one litter of tears. Yes, it definitely is. Sorry.
Or I feel like it will be portrayed, and then that's where we bring in like the romance, but like the overly done romance. Like you said that yours was well done, but yes. But like the overly done romance where the person is like, oh, you know, I see you for who you are, or let's say they're like a mean person, but the blind person like sees through to their true colors, quote unquote, even though they can't see color, and you know they end up being, it's just the two of them against the world, the blind person and the reformed like jerk, you know, like I don't know, it's so weird, the tropes.
They are indeed.
Do you have anything else? Any other commentary?
No.
Okay, so I think we can wrap this up here. I'll insert all of the links and stuff, and hope you guys are having a good Halloween, trick-or-treating. I was supposed to borrow my niece to go trick-or-treating, but the planning didn't work out, so that's all right. I'll do it next year. We've got tons more Halloweens with her still being like under 18. I will milk that. It's gonna be great.
I approve this message.
All right, till next time, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween!
This is Halloween, pumpkins scream in the dead of night.